This is the 20th of March, and I'm here in Lettermullan at a pub, and I'm meeting John Burg, great folk singer. And I said that my search for Felim, I didn't know how to find him. I had to find people who have heard about him. And I wonder how people can recall Felim. John, what do you know about him?
Well, I wouldn't be old enough to remember Felim alive. He would have been long before my time, probably 100 years ago.
The memory of him still exists.
Felim was he was a poet, of course, and it appears he was not originally from this area, the Lettermullan area. I believe he was from back towards Carna side, which is about 45 kilometres from where we sit by road, but by sea it's probably 8 kilometres.
Just around there.
Yes, and of course back before the Second World War, any transportation around here would have been sailboats, and it would have been, the sea was the highway. From where I was, from what I can gather, I remember old people saying that he wouldn't do much work if he could get away with it.
Was he lazy? Outright lazy?
Well, I'm looking for a better word than lazy, you know. Obviously, he had a lot of goodness in him, you know. Hence the fact that we're all trying to find out what kind of a person he was. But a poet was a special type of person back then, and also today, a poet, a writer or a song maker or a historian, they're special people. You know, and Felim was special in that regard, even though he wouldn't do a stroke. He wasn't. He was lazy, but I can't find a better word than that. So I'll use the word lazy.
He didn't cut the turf.
He wouldn't do anything. The only use he'd make of turf was burn it and warm himself with it. I don't think he'd even bring it in to make a fire. He was always, but he had a reason to be lazy. His mind was always working overtime, being what he was, a poet. And it's assumed that he came from the Carna area, and the reason he came over here was his father kicked him out because he wasn't good at working. And
he didn't work for his food.
No, back in those days, you had to be out in the shore, down in the foreshore, cutting seaweed to spread out on the land for fertilization.
Oh, they used to
Yes. And you see, the year started with that. Like you had to do they call it here the arach, or the spring. You had to work the land to sow potatoes, because you couldn't buy them anywhere. There were a few scantily distributed shops all around the locality, but they wouldn't be selling potatoes or milk or things like that. They might sell tobacco brought in by the British from the Far East, I suppose, and tea maybe. But apart from that, maybe some oil, some seal oil or fish oil to put in your lamp. There was no electricity. And flour, oatmeal, and stuff like that. And all that was brought in here by sailboats. The nearest outpost or trading post would have been Galway. And Galway then served the western seaboard through hookers, Galway hookers, and canvas curraghs, and so on. And the approaches to Galway then, the eastern side of Connemara from Spiddle onwards, they were able to deal with Galway through horse and cart, or horses, or donkeys, or mules.
Straight road.
You know, straight run. But this area, Lettermullan would have been 30 odd miles from Galway as the crow flies by sea. And it's 30 more as far as Slane Head and Carn and the area. But Felim was kicked out, I believe, by his father, and he found shelter here in Lettermullan over by a hill over there called Crookfian. And he lived in a house, and the roof was very bad. There was holes in it. And he always maintained that there was no need to fix it on the fine day, and you couldn't do it on the bad day. That was his reasoning. He had different reasoning to anybody else, you know. And then there'd be mornings, summer mornings, with a bit of mist in the atmosphere, and when the sun would rise quite a few degrees above the horizon, its beams would shine down, and it would shine in through the holes. And he found a name for that too. He called them in Irish Maidí Gréine, sun sticks. They were like sticks, like big long sticks, prongs poking in through his roof. And he did a song about his own house, and he maintained that his house was in a very nice place. And it was Estiasanot Willa Hachak Felim, El Fushit Slave Egenohalyakach. That was the name of the place, Ohalyakach, where his house was. I don't know much of that song, but there is reference to the Maidí Gréine coming down through the holes in the roof and shining straight in on the hearth, the tallow where the fire would be, you know. And but then he'd roam around. There was a woman called Una Nee. She was back around Cashel area, or back that area, and she was ugly. She was ugly. She wasn't pretty.
She was not pretty.
No. And she had something Felim wanted. She was selling Gusach, Bogdeal or something. You know, when you cut the turf around here, I don't know if you have turfs in
we had turfs up till
marshes in Norway.
Yes, we had.
Well, you cut the turf here, and the turf that you cut out of the bog is saturated with millions of years of water. And that's the trees that used to grow there a million years ago.
Yes.
That's been broken down by acidics, you know, rains and land water and other plants. And that's the turf. But some of it didn't fragment, it didn't melt away. Little chunks of the root of the oak trees, they were strong trees, still stay way down in the bog, preserved. So when people cut turf, they'd eventually reach that part of the bog and it exposed the bottoms of the oak trees and yank it up, you know, with force and throw it up on the bank. It would dry. And that was great. It had ink in it and it had a peculiar smell, a natural smell. And they used to bring that home from the bog and burn it and cut it up with the fire. But Felim wouldn't go on a bog. He had no bog. And even if he did, he was too lazy to work it. But he went back to this Una Nee and he asked her, would she sell him a few chunks of Bogdeal? And she said she would, and she named her price, and Felim had no money. So he says, I'm afraid, he said, I can't pay you. He said, I have no money. Because he never worked there in it. But he said, if there's anything else I can do for you, he said, for that, he said, I'll do it. Well, she said, it's reported that you're a song maker. Yes, he said, I can make a song. I'm a poet, he said. Well, why don't you make a song about me, she said, and paint a nice picture of me, in verse, in song. So he set about. He said, give me a couple of days, he said. So he set about writing the song. Probably didn't write it, he memorized it. He constructed it in his mind and kept it in there. And, but he did, and he made a movie star out of her. She was the prettiest woman in the song that you could... And the song is still here today, and it's sung everywhere by people who, not everybody know the song. But the song is called Una Yas Nini. Pretty Una Ni, he called her. And she was everything but pretty. And she was a streel as well. As you say. As well. She would have been untidy. And,
Okay.
Yeah. That's the report. That's how I heard it.